Siren's heart thudded in her chest as she stepped onto the auction platform, the polished wood cold beneath her feet. Her hands trembled slightly, though she forced them to remain steady. Every coin dropped into the collector's box was a nail in the coffin of her freedom, a cold reminder that her fate was no longer her own. The crowd around her was a blur of greed and curiosity, faces melting into each other, yet none dared meet her eyes. She was nothing but a commodity here, her life measured in silver and blood. Sold. The auctioneer's voice rang out, hollow and final. Serene's stomach lurched as she realized the price less than she imagined, less than she deserved. Yet she did not cry out, did not beg. Fear threatened to coil around her like a serpent, but she forced it down, planting her chin high. Not here. Not now. A shadow detached itself from the far side of the hall, and she felt it before she saw him. The Alpha King. His presence was magnetic, commanding, and utterly suffocating. Serene could not tear her gaze from the faint outline of his tall, imposing figure, standing silently apart from the crowd. Even without speaking, he radiated authority. Every instinct in her body recognized him as a predator, and yet, beneath the sharp edges of his control, there was a flicker of something else. Curiosity. Interest. Serene's escort led her through the fortress gates, the towering walls glimmering under the torchlight. The dark stone reflected the wealth within, but it also carried an air of danger, of silent, waiting menace. Every footstep echoed in the courtyard like a drumbeat, announcing her arrival to the pack. Wolves moved in the shadows, their eyes glinting with assessment, some narrow with suspicion, others wide with curiosity. She sensed their gaze like claws, threading through her very skin, measuring her, testing her. Each wolf's instinct whispered a silent challenge. Prove your worth or leave this place broken. Serene swallowed hard, the metal taste of fear mingling with determination. She was sold for silver, yes, but she would not break beneath the weight of their stares. High above, the Alpha King watched. His eyes were sharp, cutting through the dim torchlight, tracing Serene's every motion. Most would falter under the scrutiny of his pack. Most would collapse like brittle clay beneath the tension. But Serene, she carried a spark he could not ignore. Quiet, unyielding defiance. Something raw and untamed, hidden beneath the layers of fear he could almost smell in the air. A low growl rumbled through the courtyard, subtle but deliberate. Serene froze, heart pounding, instinct flaring. The pack was alive with tension, and she was now at its center. Every move mattered. Every glance was weighed, judged. She forced herself to walk steadily, head high, even as the whispers swirled around her, rumors already spreading like wildfire. I will not falter, she told herself. I will not give them the satisfaction. The torches cast flickering shadows across the stone walls, turning the courtyard into a dance of light and darkness. Serene inhaled the sharp scent of burning torches mixed with the earthy musk of the wolves. Her every sense was alive, alert, testing and calculating as she navigated the first hours of her new life. And always, there was him, watching from the shadows. The Alpha King's gaze followed her as if he could see the very threads of her soul, measuring the strength within her that no silver coin could ever buy. He felt the pull, subtle yet undeniable, that drew him toward this girl who refused to break under weight, fear, or scrutiny. Serene did not yet know the destiny she had stepped into, nor the dangers that lurked in every shadow of the fortress. But one truth was undeniable. Her life would never be the same again. And the Alpha King, hidden in his watchtower, had noticed. The corridors of the fortress were darker than Serene had imagined, the torches casting long, trembling shadows across the stone walls. Each step she took echoed ominously, the sound mingling with the low, almost imperceptible hum of the pack moving unseen through the halls. She tightened her grip on the coarse fabric of her dress, forcing herself to walk steadily, even as the weight of every unseen eye pressed against her spine. The air was thick with tension, rich with the scent of polished wood, burning torches, and something darker wolf musk, latent and territorial, reminding her that she had entered a world ruled by instinct and authority. The summons to the Alpha King's chambers had come silently. A single nod from a guard, no word spoken, only the knowledge that the decision was not hers to question. Serene's heartbeat raced with a mixture of fear and fascination. She had survived the auction, endured the hostility of the pack, and yet now she would face the Alpha King himself. She could feel his presence even before she reached the chamber doors, a magnetic force that pressed against her, testing her resolve. When the doors finally opened, she stepped into a space that seemed to exist beyond time. The room was vast and dimly lit, the shadows of ornate carvings dancing across the walls. Velvet drapes absorbed the torchlight, while a high-backed chair at the far end commanded attention like a throne. The Alpha King stood there, motionless, a silhouette of authority, the air around him vibrating with power. Every instinct in Serene's body screamed that she was in the presence of something both dangerous and mesmerizing. He regarded her with a sharp, assessing gaze. His eyes, the color of storm clouds before rain, seemed to pierce through every layer she had constructed for survival. He sensed her strength, not the physical strength that most humans might display, but something deeper, wilder, elemental. Something that called to the instincts buried in him, the alpha instincts that demanded recognition, respect, and, inexplicably, caution. "Serene," he said finally, his voice low, commanding, yet threaded with a nuance she could not define. Each syllable seemed to resonate with the room itself, echoing against stone and shadow. "Do you know why you are here?" Serene met his gaze steadily, refusing to shrink beneath it. Her voice was measured, steady despite the rapid thrum of her pulse. "I do not yet, perhaps to serve, or perhaps to be judged." A faint, almost imperceptible smirk brushed his lips. Most would falter under such scrutiny, would crumble and tremble at the weight of his power. But Serene held her ground. Her defiance was quiet, subtle, yet undeniable, a spark in the dark, and it captivated him more than she could know. He stepped closer, and the room seemed to contract with his presence. "You are unlike the others," he murmured, his voice softer now, almost contemplative. "Most break under scrutiny, most bend to authority." He circled her slowly, predator and ruler, reading every motion, every twitch of muscle, every subtle expression of fear or defiance. "You do not." Serene's stomach tightened at his words, a mixture of pride and apprehension coiling within her. She had survived her sale, the whispers of the pack, the stares of strangers, and now she was here, in the den of the Alpha King, her very presence a challenge. She could feel the pull between them, the subtle, almost invisible thread of connection weaving tighter with each measured glance and unspoken word. The Alpha King paused, standing mere feet away. His supernatural senses were alight, recognizing the latent strength in her, the untapped potential that could be either ally or threat. He sensed a power that went beyond the ordinary human, something that could shift the balance of his pack, a force that could not be ignored. Yet Serene did not falter. She met his gaze evenly, her pulse echoing her defiance. Inside, a silent question gnawed at her. What did he want from her? Was she a tool, a pawn, or something else entirely? She did not yet know, but she knew one thing. She would not bow blindly, and she would not allow herself to be tamed easily. For the first time, the Alpha King felt something stir that he had not felt in years. Intrigue, fascination, and the faint, almost painful pull of desire, not the desire of conquest, but the desire to understand, to uncover, to protect, and perhaps to claim what fate had placed before him. The tension between them was tangible, thick as the torchlit air around them. The first meeting was over, yet neither would forget it. The spark had been ignited, subtle but dangerous, a flame that promised both challenge and connection. As Seren was escorted from the chamber, her mind raced, but so did his. Both were aware that this first encounter had shifted something fundamental. An unspoken bond had been noticed, and neither could ignore it. Outside the chamber, the pack's murmurs reached her ears again. But Seren walked on, head held high, heart alert, every sense attuned. She had faced the Alpha King, and she had not broken. And from the shadows he watched her, calculating, intrigued, and unmistakably drawn. The corridors of the fortress were alive with murmurs, each whisper curling through the air like smoke. Seren could feel them brushing against her, subtle yet insistent, carrying the weight of suspicion and curiosity. Every glance that met hers was quick and calculating. Every sidelong stare was a silent measurement of strength. Rumors about her presence had spread faster than wildfire, reaching even the most secluded corners of the Alpha King's domain. Who is she? Why is she here? The questions hung in the air like a warning. Serene moved carefully, her senses alert. She could feel the eyes on her back as she walked, the low hum of wolf-like energy vibrating through the stone floors. The pack was testing her not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. Each member radiated instinctual dominance, some subtly challenging, others openly hostile. Even the walls seemed to hum with their collective scrutiny. "Who do you think she is?" a low voice whispered, sharp with suspicion. "She is nothing but a pawn," another replied, teeth visible as a faint snarl. "Yet the Alpha King's attention, that is not given lightly." Serene's pulse quickened. Names and faces blended in the dim corridors, but she did not flinch. She had survived the auction, survived the Alpha King's first gaze, and she would not crumble now. Every fiber of her being screamed caution, but also curiosity. Something was stirring beneath the surface of this pack, ancient rivalries, loyalties tested, unspoken laws enforced with silent authority. She was pulled aside abruptly as a tall figure stepped from the shadows. His stance was relaxed, yet every movement carried the precision of a predator. "Seren," he said, his voice low but laced with warning. "You walk as though you belong. Do you understand the cost if you do not?" "I understand," Seren replied evenly, steadying her racing heart. Her gaze met his without faltering. "But I do not intend to bow to fear." A faint chuckle escaped him, not mocking but intrigued. "Few speak so boldly here," he murmured. "Most crumble under the weight of the pack's eyes. Remember this. Every action, every word is measured. One misstep." His words trailed, unspoken but heavy with threat. Serene's hands clenched lightly at her sides. "I will not falter," she repeated silently, willing courage into her limbs. "I will not be broken." Her instincts prickled as she felt the latent energy of the pack, a living, breathing entity with rules she had yet to understand. Every glance, every whisper carried an undercurrent of challenge. Later, as she moved through the fortress library, a place of rare quiet and relative safety, Seren stumbled upon clues about the Alpha King's past. Ancient tomes and forbidden records spoke of battles long past, betrayals that had torn alliances apart, and choices that had hardened the man now known as the Alpha King. She traced her fingers over the faded ink, absorbing the weight of history, the ghosts of those who had come before her, and the reasons he might have chosen her. A name appeared again and again. Her name, Seren, not merely as a visitor or servant, but as someone central to prophecies long ignored. A chill ran down her spine. He chose me for a reason. Her mind whirled with questions. Was it destiny, instinct, or something else? Something tied to the Alpha King's deepest secrets? Her thoughts were interrupted by a sharp sound, a low growl, close and deliberate. Seren froze, heart hammering. From the shadows, a pack member emerged, eyes gleaming with challenge. He stepped forward, testing her without words, muscles coiled as if ready to strike. Serene held her ground, steadying her breathing. She felt the pull of her own instincts, Subtle but undeniable, stirring in response to the pack's challenge. She met the wolf-like stare without retreat, projecting strength she hoped would be enough. Impressive, the Alpha King's voice echoed from the corridor, smooth and commanding. Serene's gaze snapped toward him. He emerged from the shadows, tall and unyielding, yet there was a spark of pride in his eyes. Few survive the first test without faltering. Serene swallowed. "I intend to survive all the tests," she said softly, though firmly. He studied her for a long moment, as if weighing her spirit against the pack, against the fortress, against the very laws that governed their world. Then he nodded, almost imperceptibly, and stepped back into the shadowed hallway. The murmurs of the pack resumed, but now laced with something new. Curiosity, and perhaps a grudging respect. Serene felt the first stirrings of her place within this dangerous world, not yet secure, but undeniable. She was no longer merely a commodity. She was a player, a force, and a spark that had caught the Alpha King's notice. Yet she knew the path ahead would be treacherous. Every corner held a secret, every glance a challenge, every whispered word a test of loyalty. Serene's pulse remained high, her senses sharpened. The fortress was alive with shadows and whispers, and the Alpha King's attention lingered like a tether she could neither see nor resist. As night fell, Serene stood in the courtyard once more, feeling the weight of the pack's scrutiny. She inhaled deeply, the scent of pine, stone, and musk filling her senses. She had survived the first true test of her strength, yet a greater challenge awaited. The Alpha King's choice, the pack's judgment, and her own instincts would determine her survival, and perhaps the destiny that now bound her to this dark, powerful world. The fortress seemed quieter than usual that evening, though Serene knew better than to trust silence. Every shadow felt alive, every flicker of torchlight a potential observer. She moved carefully through the halls, senses alert to every whisper of movement, every breath of the pack. Even here, in the dim corridors, she felt the weight of unseen eyes. The pack was patient, waiting for any sign of weakness, any misstep to exploit. Yet there was another presence she could not ignore. The Alpha King. Even when he was absent from the room, the memory of his gaze lingered, heavy and magnetic, like a shadow clinging to her. Serene could still feel it across her skin, the faint brush of his attention against her consciousness, teasing, probing, pulling. That night, she found herself summoned to a smaller chamber within the fortress, the one he reserved for private audiences. The room was dimly lit by a single lantern, casting golden reflections against the polished stone walls. The faint scent of cedar and burning oil filled the air, mingling with the subtle, primal undertone of the Alpha King himself. Serene's pulse quickened at the familiarity of it, at the invisible thread that seemed to pull her closer whenever she neared him. He was already there, seated in the high-backed chair that exuded authority, his posture relaxed yet unyielding. When Serene entered, their eyes met, and the room seemed to contract around them, charged with tension. His gaze lingered on her longer than propriety or survival allowed, tracing the subtle shifts in her posture, the quiet strength in the way she held herself, even in uncertainty. "Serene," he said, voice low and measured, each word deliberate. "You are learning quickly, yet there are still distractions?" She tilted her head slightly, curiosity and caution battling within her. "Distractions?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. "Or temptations?" A faint smirk brushed his lips, almost imperceptible. His eyes darkened, storm-like and intense, and Serene felt her chest tighten, an almost painful pull she could not explain. "Perhaps both," he murmured, "and some are far more dangerous than you realize." Serene's gaze dropped to her hands, clenched loosely at her sides. She felt the surge of desire in the subtlest form, the unspoken electricity that danced between them whenever they were close. Her heartbeat was louder now, echoing in her ears, a reminder that her attraction to him was not merely emotional, It was instinctual, primal, entwined with the pack's own supernatural energy. He stepped closer, and the lantern's light caught the edges of his face, highlighting the sharp lines of his jaw and the intensity of his stormy eyes. The air between them shimmered, thick with unspoken desire and restrained power. Serene could feel the pull of his presence like a tangible force, and she had to remind herself. She was a guest in his domain, and every wrong step could bring ruin. "Do you feel it?" he asked, voice dropping almost to a whisper, his gaze never leaving hers. "The pull. Between us? You cannot deny it." Serene's throat tightened. I feel it," she admitted softly, though every word was measured. She would not let weakness show, even if it consumed her from within. "But I will not let it control me." A low growl rumbled from somewhere beyond the walls, subtle yet deliberate, a reminder that the pack was always watching, always waiting. Serene's instincts flared. The Alpha King's instincts flared in response. For a moment, the world outside their small chamber disappeared, leaving only the tension between them, the unspoken bond that neither could ignore. He reached out, just a hand's breadth away, and the faint brush of his presence against hers sent a shiver through her. Yet neither moved closer. The restraint between them was as powerful as the desire itself. This was forbidden territory, a slow-burn fire that could consume them both if they allowed it to. "You are clever, Serene," he said finally, stepping back slightly. "And you are strong. That strength, it intrigues me, but it also frightens me. You could be the undoing of everything, yet I cannot turn away." Serene swallowed, the weight of his words pressing against her chest. Her pulse was a drumbeat in the silent chamber. She felt the duality of her position, the allure of him, the danger of the pack, and the realization that every glance, every subtle gesture, carried consequences she could not yet measure. As she left the chamber, the hallways of the fortress seemed to close around her once more. She could still feel him watching, a shadow lingering in her mind, a presence she could neither escape nor ignore. The pack's whispers resumed, but Serene walked on, head held high, senses sharpened, heart racing not just with fear, but with the thrilling, terrifying pull of forbidden desire. That night, as she settled into the small quarters allotted to her, Serene sat quietly by the window. The moonlight spilled across her face, pale and reflective, and she traced the memory of his gaze, the tension of their first private encounter. The attraction was dangerous, intoxicating, and yet undeniably real. She knew one thing with certainty. Surviving the pack's scrutiny would be the least of her challenges. The Alpha King had noticed her, drawn to her, and the pull between them had begun. And in this fortress of shadows and whispers, desire was never just temptation, it was power, and power could destroy or bind. The night air was thick with anticipation as Serene approached the central courtyard of the fortress. The moon hung low and full in the sky, silver and commanding, its light spilling over the jagged stone walls and glinting off the sharpened edges of the torches that lined the perimeter. Tonight, the pack would gather for the full moon ceremony, a ritual older than memory, a display of power and unity that pulsed with ancient, instinctual energy. Serene's pulse quickened, not solely from fear, but from the electric charge that thrummed in the air, mingling with the scent of pine, burning torches, and the raw, primal musk of the pack. Her instincts, heightened and restless, flared at the awareness that she was more than just a guest tonight. She was part of something larger, a thread in the web of the Alpha King's dominion. The pack was already assembled, a sea of fur, teeth, and muscle moving with silent synchronization. Wolves and shifters alike formed a ring around the ceremonial fire at the center of the courtyard. Each member radiated power, their eyes reflecting the silver light of the moon, their postures taut and alert. Every movement was measured, every growl and whisper deliberate, an undercurrent of testing and challenge. Serene's gaze shifted instinctively toward the Alpha King. He stood at the head of the circle, commanding and absolute. Yet there was an intensity in his eyes reserved only for her. His presence alone seemed to pull the air taut, drawing her attention as if by some invisible tether. Serene felt a shiver run down her spine, the unmistakable tug of instinctual attraction, the pull that had begun to simmer between them now, flaring with the energy of the full moon. The ceremony began with a low, rumbling chant that resonated through the stone floors, vibrating against her chest and stirring the deepest parts of her being. Serene's senses sharpened. She could hear the subtle shifts of paws, the rasp of claws against stone, the collective inhale and exhale of the pack. She could smell the heady mixture of wolf musk, sweat, and fire. Every nerve in her body seemed to hum in response, a subtle awareness that she was not merely watching. She was part of the ritual, whether she realized it or not. As the Alpha King stepped forward, the pack fell into near-perfect silence, their focus unwavering. Serene noticed the faint rise of his chest, the controlled flex of his muscles, the way his gaze briefly flicked to her with an intensity that made her heart stutter. She felt it in her own body, a resonance, a pull, a magnetic tug toward him that was beyond conscious thought. Her pulse raced as she instinctively stepped closer, drawn not by obedience, but by something deeper, something that whispered of destiny. She was aware of every sensation, the warmth of the fire against her skin, the cool night air brushing her face, the faint brush of instinctual energy, radiating from the Alpha King. Her hands trembled slightly, and she forced herself to breathe evenly, though her thoughts were a whirlwind of fear, wonder, and something far more dangerous: desire. The Alpha King's voice cut through the hum of the ritual, low and commanding. "Serene," he said, his eyes locking onto hers. "Do you feel it? The pull between us? The bond that stirs under the moon?" Serene's throat tightened. I feel it," she whispered, though the words barely carried over the ritual's resonance. Her pulse thundered in her ears, and for a fleeting moment, the world outside the circle ceased to exist. It was only her and him, the pack, and the moonlit energy swirling between them. A sudden shift in the circle drew her attention. A pack member snarled, testing the boundaries of power, and Serene flinched instinctively, only to find the Alpha King's gaze on her, steady and protective. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet the message was clear. He was aware of her every movement, and her place in the pack was under his scrutiny and guard. The ritual reached its peak as the Alpha King let out a commanding howl, echoed and answered by every member of the pack. Serene's senses were overwhelmed, yet she did not look away. She felt her own instincts stirring in resonance with the moon, a pull she could neither fight nor deny. The connection between her and the Alpha King throbbed with an almost tangible intensity, unspoken yet undeniable. When the ceremony ended, the pack slowly dispersed, leaving a lingering hum of power in the air. Serene stood quietly, still absorbing the weight of what she had witnessed. She felt changed, no longer just an outsider, no longer merely a pawn. Tonight, she had glimpsed the raw force of the Alpha King's world, and she had felt, deep within her own instincts, that she was inextricably tied to it. And in the shadows, the Alpha King's gaze lingered on her longer than necessary. There was approval there, yes, but more than that, something older, deeper, more instinctual. A pull that spoke of destiny, of bonds yet to be tested, of a connection neither could ignore. Serene's breath caught as she realized the truth. Her life had shifted irrevocably. The pack's power, the Alpha King's attention, the moon above all of it was calling her forward. And as she looked toward him, she knew that she could never return to the life she had lost. The moon had warned her, and the warning was not about danger alone. It was about fate, desire, and the inexorable pull that bound her to the Alpha King. Serene's fingers brushed against the rough stone wall of the fortress corridor as she moved cautiously, her footsteps muffled by the cold, polished floors. The fortress had grown more than a home. It was a labyrinth of shadows, whispers, and hidden histories. And tonight, instinct had pulled her toward a place she had not yet dared to explore. A faint glimmer caught her eye behind a tapestry depicting a long-forgotten battle of the pack. She paused, the flickering torchlight illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny spirits in the air. Serene's pulse quickened. She pressed her hand against the fabric, and with a subtle push, a section of the wall shifted, revealing a hidden passage. Her breath caught in her throat. What is this place? Why was it hidden? Serene's heart raced with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She stepped inside, the air cooler here, tinged with the faint metallic scent of aged iron and the musky undertone of forgotten magic. Every instinct in her body hummed, warning her to tread carefully, yet urging her forward. The chamber opened into a small room lined with artifacts, scrolls, and relics of a past she could barely recognize. Her eyes fell on a set of intricately carved boxes, each one inscribed with symbols she did not fully understand, but felt strangely familiar. Serene's fingers trembled as she lifted the lid of one, revealing letters, faded photographs, and a delicate necklace that bore a crest identical to one she had seen in her dreams, memories she had long buried. Her mind raced. These are pieces of my life, my past. Things I've been searching for without knowing it. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The Alpha King had chosen her for a reason far deeper than she had imagined. And within this chamber, she began to piece together fragments of her identity, the truth about her origins, and the legacy that had led her to this very moment. A sudden sound, a subtle shift behind her made her freeze. The Alpha King stepped into the doorway, his presence as commanding and magnetic as ever. Serene's pulse hammered, not with fear alone, but with the undeniable awareness of him standing so close. His eyes, storm-colored and piercing, scanned the room and then settled on her, a mixture of suspicion, concern, and something far more dangerous, desire restrained by centuries of control. "Serene," he said, his voice low but resonant, echoing slightly off the stone walls. "What have you found?" She held her ground, clutching the artifacts close, her fingers brushing the edges of the necklace. "I found fragments of myself," she said cautiously, "and clues about you, about why you chose me." His gaze sharpened, assessing her every reaction. The air between them was thick with unspoken tension, a tangible current that hummed like the distant growl of wolves waiting in the shadows. "Do you understand the danger of this knowledge?" he asked, stepping closer, the energy around him pressing against her, a force both protective and possessive. "I do," Serene replied, her voice steady despite the swirl of emotions inside her. "But I cannot ignore it. I need to know." The Alpha King's eyes softened for the briefest moment before hardening again. He knew her defiance was not rebellion, it was a spark, a reminder of the strength he had seen from the first moment she entered his fortress. Yet knowledge was dangerous in this place. Secrets could shift loyalties, ignite conflict, and unravel even the most controlled pacts. He circled the chamber slowly, observing Serene as she explored the relics with a careful hand, each discovery stirring more questions than answers. She could feel the pull between them intensifying, subtle yet undeniable, the kind of tension that threatened to ignite at any moment. Their bond, tested now by curiosity, fear, and forbidden intrigue, deepened with every glance, every unspoken thought. Serene lifted a scroll, the edges worn and brittle, and her eyes widened as she traced the familiar handwriting, her own name, interwoven with prophecies she had never known existed. Her breath caught, a mixture of awe and dread. This was always meant to be," she whispered, almost to herself. The Alpha King stepped beside her, close enough that she felt the warmth radiating from him, the faint scent of his dominance mingling with the musky air of the chamber. "And now you know why," he said, voice low, threading between command and confession. You were never meant to be ordinary, Siren, and neither were you meant to stand alone. Her heart hammered as she realized the depth of his words. Trust had become a fragile thread between them, tested by shadows, secrets, and the weight of destiny. Yet she also felt the undeniable pull, the promise of alliance, connection, and perhaps something far more dangerous. The chamber seemed to close around them, filled with whispers of history, latent power, and the silent understanding that their fates were entwined in ways neither could ignore. Siren felt both empowered and vulnerable, a paradox she had learned to live with since arriving at the fortress. And as the Alpha King's gaze lingered on her, stormy and unyielding, she knew one truth with unwavering clarity. The secrets uncovered tonight had shifted everything. Trust, danger, desire, and destiny, now intertwined in a way that would change them both forever. The first howl ripped through the night like a jagged blade, sharp and urgent, echoing off the stone walls of the fortress. Siren froze, the sound vibrating deep in her chest. The pack stirred immediately, muscles tensing, ears flicking, eyes flashing in the torchlight. Every instinct in her body screamed danger, yet she could not look away from the gates, where shadows shifted unnaturally against the moonlight. The Alpha King appeared silently beside her, as if drawn by the same instinct that had pulled her through the fortress for weeks. His presence was commanding, protective, yet restrained. He was the calm at the eye of the storm. Siren felt the pull between them tighten, a magnetic tension threading through her chest even as fear clawed at her nerves. "They're here," he said, voice low, edged with controlled fury. "The rival pack has come sooner than I anticipated. They mean to test us. To test you." Serene's gaze met his, unwavering despite the tremor in her hands. "Then I will not falter," she replied, though her pulse was a drumbeat against her ribs. "I will not let them see me break. I cannot." The courtyard erupted into motion. Pack members moved with lethal precision, forming defensive lines around the gates. Siren's senses flared. The scent of the enemy, wild, sharp, and unrestrained, assaulted her. She could feel the instinctual tension radiating from the Alpha King, his power brushing against her like a tangible force. The magnetic pull she had felt since her first days in the fortress surged stronger, mingling with the fear and adrenaline thrumming in her veins. A shadow shifted at the edge of the gate, and a rival warrior leapt forward, snarling. Siren instinctively ducked, rolling with a grace that surprised even her, feeling the brush of the Alpha King's presence at her back, protective and commanding. The clash of bodies and the metallic scrape of claws against stone filled the air. Siren realized, with a flicker of awe, that her own instincts were sharpening in response to the chaos. She could anticipate movements, feel the subtle shifts in the rival pack's formation. She was no longer merely a spectator. She was part of the defense, her courage and agility under scrutiny from every pack member. "You've grown strong," the Alpha King murmured near her ear, his breath brushing against her skin, igniting the familiar, dangerous pull she could neither ignore nor fight. "But strength alone will not keep you alive tonight. Trust in your instincts, and in me." Siren nodded, focusing, letting her body move with a rhythm she had never known before. She met challenges head-on, parrying attacks, dodging strikes, and protecting weaker pack members. Each action was a test of loyalty, courage, and the bond she was forging not just with the Alpha King, but with the pack itself. The battle escalated, the rival pack relentless. Siren's mind raced, calculating, sensing every shift, every flicker of movement. She could feel the Alpha King's eyes on her constantly, guiding, protecting, yet never intrusive. Their connection pulsed with unspoken communication, a silent acknowledgement that they were in this together, bound by instinct, strategy, and something far more personal. As the last of the rival pack was driven back, leaving behind snarls and retreating shadows, the fortress fell into tense silence. Blood and sweat mingled in the air, sense sharp and heady, the adrenaline still thrumming through every nerve. Seren sank to her knees briefly, chest heaving, and felt the weight of exhaustion, but also the fierce satisfaction of survival, of proving her loyalty. The Alpha King approached, his expression a mixture of pride, concern, and something softer, more intimate. "Seren?" he said, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder, grounding her even as the battlefield lingered in their senses. "You fought well. You held your place among my pack. Few could have done what you did tonight." Her heart thudded, not only from exertion but from the nearness of him, the heat of his gaze, the magnetic tension that refused to fade. I did what I had to," she whispered, though even in her modesty she felt the truth. She had surprised herself. Her courage had shone under pressure, and the pack had noticed. The Alpha King's hand lingered a moment longer before he stepped back, surveying the courtyard with sharp, calculating eyes. The enemy had been repelled, but the message was clear. Threats would come, and their world was fragile, balanced precariously on power, loyalty, and instincts honed to perfection. Seren realized, as she wiped the sweat and grime from her face, that her place in this pack, and her bond with the Alpha King, had shifted irrevocably. She had proven herself in battle, yet she had also felt the pull between them more acutely than ever. The dangerous blend of attraction and duty that bound them together. And as the fortress settled into uneasy quiet, Seren could not shake the understanding that this victory was only temporary. Rival packs lurked, whispers continued, and her destiny, tangled with the Alpha King's, was far from settled. Yet in the midst of danger, she had discovered something vital: her strength, her courage, and the undeniable, unspoken bond that now tethered her to the Alpha King, even as the world outside threatened to tear them apart. The aftermath of the battle still lingered in the fortress, a subtle hum of tension that pulsed through the stone walls. Seren moved through the dim corridors with careful steps, every nerve alert. Her muscles ached from exertion, her skin still tingling from adrenaline, and yet she could not escape the lingering pull of the Alpha King's presence. Even when he was not in sight, she felt it, a magnetic thread connecting them in ways that defied explanation. The Alpha King had retreated to his private chambers to strategize, but his influence hovered over her like an unseen weight. Seren could sense the subtle shift in the air whenever she neared the places he had been. It was as if the fortress itself acknowledged his authority, and the bond that tethered them together. Every glance she received from the pack carried whispers of scrutiny, yet her thoughts kept drifting back to him, to the fire in his eyes and the quiet magnetism of his strength. That evening, she found herself summoned once again, the official pretense of duty masking a more dangerous purpose. As she entered the chamber, the flickering lanterns revealed him seated at a table strewn with maps and relics, his posture rigid, his gaze dark and unreadable. When he looked up, his storm-colored eyes met hers, and the room seemed to contract around them, heavy with unspoken tension. "Seren," he said, voice low, almost pained, "you fought well. Bravery and strength are commendable." His words were measured, yet she could feel the undercurrent desire, caution, and the weight of unspoken longing. Her pulse quickened, both from his nearness and the unspoken charge in the air. "I only did what was necessary," she replied, steadying her voice, though her chest betrayed her. She felt the pull of him like a tide, and she knew he felt it too. He stood abruptly, crossing the room with silent authority. Serene's breath caught as he stopped just short of her, the tension between them tangible, almost unbearable. His gaze swept over her as if measuring every heartbeat, every flicker of thought. "Do you understand?" he murmured. "How dangerous this attachment could be?" "I do," she whispered, aware of the tremor in her hands. "And yet I cannot deny it." The Alpha King's jaw tightened. He was a creature of command, of discipline, yet something about Seren defied his control. He could feel the magnetic pull of her presence, the subtle stirring of destiny in the depths of his instincts, and it both terrified and thrilled him. Love in this world was no gentle thing, it was weaponized, capable of shattering loyalty, breeding weakness and inciting chaos within the pack. Yet he could not turn away. Seren sensed his struggle, the invisible battle waged behind stormy eyes. Every step he took, every subtle movement, was a war between desire and duty. She felt it in her own chest, the echo of instinct, the call of forbidden attraction, and the awareness that her heart had become a weapon as dangerous as any sword or claw. "Your heart is not safe here," he said, the words almost a growl. "Not with me, not with this pack." His gaze bore into hers, and she felt the weight of centuries of law and legacy pressing between them. "And yet, it is yours. I cannot stop this. Pull." Serene's fingers brushed against her own chest, as if to steady the storm within her. "Then we must learn to control it," she whispered, meeting his gaze with quiet defiance. "Or it will destroy us both." The Alpha King's stormy eyes softened for the briefest moment before hardening again. Desire and duty collided in him, the Alpha King who had commanded packs and kingdoms now caught in a trap of heart and instinct he had never anticipated. He stepped back, a deliberate retreat that left tension hanging in the air like electric fog. Seren exhaled slowly, her body still thrumming with the memory of his nearness. She felt the pull of him, the dangerous allure, and the quiet understanding that their bond had deepened irreversibly. Love was a weapon indeed, one that cut deeper than any blade, and left both vulnerability and power in its wake. In the quiet of the chamber, as shadows flickered and the distant sounds of the fortress settled into uneasy silence, Seren understood the truth. In this world of loyalty, power, and supernatural law, her heart could be the strongest weapon she wielded, or the weakest link that could undo everything. And the Alpha King, despite every instinct honed through centuries, was equally bound, equally ensnared by the pull of her presence, the spark of her courage, and the undeniable dangerous allure that connected them. The night pressed heavy against the fortress walls, thick with the scent of smoke from the fires that still lingered from recent skirmishes. Seren stood on the balcony, her fingers gripping the cold stone railing as moonlight washed over her, silvery and relentless. The wind teased strands of her hair across her face, carrying whispers of distant forests and the untamed wild beyond the walls. Her heart ached with the weight of the decision before her. The Alpha King's presence lingered inside the fortress, in every shadow, every echoing footstep, every glance she caught from the pack. Yet the choice she faced was one that could not be deferred. Remain, and she would claim a life beside him as his queen, bound by love, loyalty, and the laws of the pack, but lose the freedom that had defined her for so long. Leave, and she risked everything. Safety, connection, and perhaps even life itself. Her thoughts were a storm of memories and instincts. I have never been powerless. I have survived everything. But can I survive giving up or walking away? The words echoed through her mind, each repetition a drumbeat against her ribs. Serene could feel her pulse in her throat, the steady hammer of her heartbeat reminding her that every second carried weight. A rustle behind her made her turn. The Alpha King emerged from the shadows, his form regal and predatory under the moonlight. His eyes, storm-colored and piercing, scanned her face with an intensity that both steadied and unnerved her. Serene could feel the pull between them, raw and magnetic, threading through her chest like a wire taut with electricity. "Seren," he said, voice low but commanding, carrying both authority and an edge of vulnerability she had never heard before. "This choice, it is yours alone. But know this, your heart, your spirit, your loyalty, they are part of this pack, part of me. Leaving will not be simple. Staying may cost more than you think." Seren swallowed hard, forcing her gaze to meet his. "And if I stay, will it truly be my choice? Or will I be bound by duty, by expectation, By the pack's eyes watching every move? Her words trembled slightly, but she did not look away. I am Seren. I have fought to survive. I will not be a pawn. The Alpha King's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, a predator and protector entwined in a single form, his presence pressing against her senses. You will not be a pawn, he said, voice low and intense. You will be my queen, my equal, if you choose it. But you must understand the cost. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of other pack members moving unseen, their whispers heavy with anticipation. Serene's instincts flared, reminding her that loyalty here was fragile and betrayal was never far. Her eyes flicked toward the horizon, imagining a life outside these walls, free of obligations, yet stripped of the pull, the bond, the dangerous allure of the Alpha King. She closed her eyes, letting the moonlight wash over her, drawing on her instincts, her courage, and the lessons she had learned through fire, blood, and shadowed halls. I am Seren. I survive. I choose my path. When she opened her eyes, they met his with steady resolve. I will stay, she said, voice firm yet soft, carrying the weight of decision, desire, and understanding of the risks. But I will not be tamed, not by anyone, and you must trust me completely. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The Alpha King's stormy gaze softened, then hardened with a new determination. I trust you, Seren, he said, the words carrying authority, reverence, and a hint of unspoken vulnerability. And if anyone dares threaten you, threaten this choice, I will not forgive. The tension in the fortress did not dissipate. Whispers lingered, shadows moved, and the pack remained watchful, testing, judging. Yet in this charged moment, Seren knew she had chosen her path, embraced her heart, and accepted the dangerous allure of love as a weapon in a world where freedom and loyalty collided. As she stepped away from the balcony, the wind catching the edges of her cloak, Seren felt the full weight of her choice, the thrill of empowerment, and the quiet, undeniable pull toward the Alpha King. They were bound now, not just by destiny, but by a decision that would echo through every heartbeat, every shadow, and every trial yet to come. And in the silent, moonlit corridors, the truth settled into her bones. Love had become her weapon, her shield, and the ultimate test of survival. The central courtyard of the fortress was alive with tension, the air thick with the mingled scents of iron, earth, and the musk of the assembled pack. Torches flickered against the stone walls, casting shadows that danced like restless spirits across the faces of warriors, elders, and challengers alike. Seren stepped forward, her heart pounding, every nerve alight with anticipation and fear. Her choice from the balcony, the price of freedom had led her here, to the threshold of judgment, where her fate would be scrutinized not only by the Alpha King but by the eyes of the entire pack. She could feel their gazes piercing her from every corner, suspicion, curiosity, and the weight of centuries-old tradition pressing upon her. Each step she took echoed against the stones, a rhythmic drumbeat that mirrored her rising pulse. Her cloak, dark and flowing, swayed with each movement, the fabric whispering secrets only she could hear. I am Seren. I am not afraid. The Alpha King emerged from the shadows of his throne-like seat, his presence immediately commanding silence. Storm-colored eyes swept over the crowd, then lingered on her. The tension between them was tangible, like the taut string of a bow, each moment pregnant with unspoken desire, trust, and the fear of rejection. You stand before us, Seren. His voice rang out, low and powerful. Facing the judgment of the pack. You have chosen your path, yet their eyes demand proof. Seren met his gaze, feeling the magnetic pull that had drawn them together since her arrival. The Alpha King's stormy eyes softened, a flicker of vulnerability hidden beneath layers of command. He trusts me, even as they do not. And I will not betray that trust. A murmur rippled through the pack as the elders stepped forward, their expressions unreadable. "The strength of a wolf," one began, voice measured and deliberate, "is not proven by obedience alone. Actions in the face of threat, loyalty under pressure, and courage when death lurks. These define true kinship." Seren felt a rush of awareness, the pulse of the pack like a living organism around her. Her thoughts raced. Every battle fought, every whisper confronted, every choice made, all culminating in this moment. She could feel the latent energy of the Alpha King brushing against her, a subtle current of instinct and attraction that made her pulse quicken. One of the younger warriors stepped forward, eyes sharp and questioning. "And what of desire?" he asked, the words heavy with implication. "Does it cloud judgment? Can she withstand the pull of the Alpha King and remain true to herself?" Seren's chest tightened. She could feel the Alpha King's proximity now, his heat and authority wrapping around her like a living thing. Every instinct screamed that she was exposed, vulnerable, but also powerful. She inhaled deeply, tasting the cold night air, feeling the weight of destiny pressing upon her, and lifted her chin. "I am Seren," she declared, voice strong and unwavering despite the tremor in her heart. "I stand here not as a pawn, not as a subject, but as my own. I have fought, survived, and chosen this path willingly. I will not deny my strength, my heart, or my loyalty. And if my heart pulls toward the Alpha King, it is because it is my choice, my destiny, and mine alone to give." The courtyard fell silent. The pack's murmurs were replaced by the faint sound of wind rustling through the banners above. Serene could feel every gaze on her, every heartbeat synchronized with her own, waiting for the Alpha King's response. He stepped forward, closing the distance between them. The storm in his eyes was tempered by a rare softness, the flicker of a man torn between centuries of law and the irresistible force of emotion. "Seren," he said, voice low and reverent, "you have proven yourself beyond doubt, not only to the pack, but to me. Tradition is the foundation of this kingdom, but my heart chooses you. Always." A collective murmur rippled through the pack. Some nodded in approval, others exchanged wary glances. But the tension remained alive, electric, and thick with anticipation. Seren felt a surge of relief, mingled with the persistent pull of desire and the awareness of the path still ahead. The Alpha King extended his hand, and though she hesitated for a moment, she placed hers in his. The electricity between them was undeniable, a slow-burning fire that promised danger, protection, and something more potent than either had anticipated. As the torches flickered, shadows stretching across the courtyard, the Alpha King's voice carried over the pack. "Let this be known. Seren is not only my choice, but my equal. Her courage, loyalty, and heart are the strength of this pack. Anyone who doubts her will answer to me." The murmurs became a low, approving growl, the pack acknowledging their new queen, her place beside the Alpha King cemented, but not without lingering whispers, tension, and the ever-present knowledge that danger was never far. Seren met the Alpha King's gaze, feeling the pull of their bond tighten, the heat of attraction mingling with the thrill of triumph. She knew the road ahead would be treacherous, filled with challenges that would test loyalty, strength, and love. But in this moment she had claimed her place, chosen her destiny, and stood at the crossroads of tradition and the heart. And as the wind swept through the courtyard, carrying the scent of the wild beyond the fortress, Seren realized the story was far from over, and the pull of destiny, of love, danger, and power was only beginning. The fortress slept uneasily under a moonless sky, its stone walls heavy with secrets. Seren moved through the corridors, senses stretched taut, every whisper and creak a potential threat. Her instincts had never been sharper. The events of the past weeks had awakened something primal within her, a heightened awareness, a readiness for danger that left her both exhilarated and on edge. She had discovered the first hints of betrayal hours ago, a misplaced seal, a hidden ledger, and hushed conversations that ended abruptly. Whenever she approached, each clue was a thread leading to a tangled web of conspiracy within the pack, one that threatened not only her life, but the Alpha King's very reign. "Seren," a voice murmured behind her, low and cautious. She spun, fingers curling instinctively. The Alpha King emerged from the shadows, eyes stormy yet calm, the weight of leadership pressing down on him in ways she recognized. "You've found them," he said, almost a whisper, though the tension in the room made it roar like thunder. "They've been setting traps. Blood rituals, silver-infused snares meant to weaken you, to lure the pack into chaos," Seren replied, her voice steady despite the racing of her pulse. "Someone in your inner circle. They intended my presence as a provocation." The Alpha King's jaw tightened, his gaze darkening with controlled fury. "So the whispers were true," he muttered, stepping closer, the predatory energy of his presence brushing against her. "And yet, you are still here, still standing." Seren met his gaze, defiance igniting in her chest. "I will not be a pawn," she said, voice unwavering. "If they thought fear would weaken me, they miscalculated." Her eyes flicked toward the distant corridors where shadows moved silently, betrayers hidden within the fortress walls. Together, they navigated the labyrinthine halls, senses attuned to every subtle movement. Serene's own instincts, sharpened by weeks of survival and training under the Alpha King's watchful presence, allowed her to detect hidden traps before they could ensnare them. Silver flakes glinted faintly in dark corners, and the faint scent of blood hung in the air, warnings of rituals designed to provoke chaos, to manipulate and divide the pack. "You move like a shadow," the Alpha King murmured, his voice low, charged with both admiration and something deeper, more intimate. "You've learned quickly. You are remarkable, Seren." Her pulse fluttered, a subtle warmth spreading through her chest. His words, layered with praise and the unspoken pull between them, made her heart both light and heavy light with acknowledgement. Heavy with the undeniable bond threading between them. The deeper they delved, the more sinister the conspiracy became. Faces once familiar now seemed masks of duplicity, whispers of mutiny curling through the corridors like smoke. Seren realized that her very existence in the fortress had been a calculated risk by the traitor, a gamble to disrupt the balance of power. And yet, as danger coiled around them, the Alpha King's hand brushed hers a fleeting, grounding touch, enough to anchor her in the storm of fear and tension. "We will face this together," he said, the words a promise and a warning. "No one betrays my pack without consequence, and no one will harm you while I breathe." Seren drew a slow, steadying breath, letting the warmth of his presence mingle with the cool, metallic scent of the fortress. Her instincts told her the traitor would strike again, that silver and blood were only the beginning of the danger, but she no longer felt powerless. Every heartbeat, every flicker of awareness, every pulse of adrenaline reminded her that she was no longer merely a pawn. She was a force to be reckoned with. As they moved toward the heart of the fortress, shadows tightening around them, Seren's mind raced. Not with fear, but with strategy. She could sense the subtle stirrings of rebellion, the hidden threats weaving their way toward them. Yet she was ready, sharpened by the Alpha King's guidance, her own courage, and the bond growing between them, a bond that was now more than attraction. It was an unspoken promise of survival, loyalty, and mutual protection. And in the silence before the storm, Seren knew this. The conspiracy would not succeed. The traitor would be revealed, the pack's loyalty tested, and the Alpha King and she would emerge stronger, bound together by trust, danger, and a shared understanding that love, in this world, was as deadly and powerful as any weapon forged in blood and silver. Dawn broke over the fortress like molten gold spilling across stone and shadow. Seren stood at the edge of the balcony, the morning air crisp against her skin, carrying the scent of pine and distant rivers. Yet the serenity of the day was deceptive. Tension simmered beneath the surface, threading through the halls of the fortress like a coiled serpent. Today would not be ordinary. The prophecy had been revealed at last, a centuries-old declaration hidden in the Alpha, King's most sacred archives. Seren, it declared, was the Alpha King's true mate, destined to stand by him in rule, in battle, and in the weaving of the pack's future. The words were heavy, infused with power and inevitability. And yet, not all embraced destiny with open hearts. As she descended the spiral staircase, the fortress seemed to pulse with unease. Members of the pack whispered in shadowed corners, eyes sharp and suspicious. Some bowed their heads in reverence at her presence, while others scowled, their loyalty to the Alpha King complicated by fear, jealousy, and doubt. Every footstep she took echoed against stone, a drumbeat in the tense silence, a herald of the storm to come. The Alpha King waited at the central courtyard, his posture regal, yet his storm-colored eyes betrayed the weight of expectation pressing down upon him. When their gazes met, Seren felt that same magnetic pull, the undeniable connection that had grown between them, now intensified by destiny itself. He stepped forward, hand extended, not commanding, but inviting, a silent acknowledgement of their shared path. "Seren," he said, voice low, resonating with authority and an edge of awe. "The prophecy is clear. You are bound to me by more than choice, by more than fate. You are mine in ways that the pack cannot ignore." Serene's chest tightened. The words carried exhilaration, but also a heavy responsibility. "I understand," she whispered, voice steady despite the tumult in her heart. "But understanding does not erase fear. It does not make the opposition vanish." A murmur ran through the courtyard. Faces turned, divided, some eyes filled with hope and reverence, others with suspicion and resentment. The Alpha King's voice rose, carrying the weight of command and inevitability. "Let all know," he declared, "Seren is my mate. Her strength, courage, and heart are not only her own, they are the foundation of this pack's future." The reaction was immediate. Loyalists stepped forward, their approval a wave of support that eased some of the tension. Yet detractors lingered in shadow, their gazes narrow and calculating. Serene could feel the undercurrent of political games, the subtle threats masked behind polite bows and measured words. Every instinct she possessed screamed caution, yet she could not allow fear to dictate her steps. The Alpha King's hand brushed hers as they moved through the courtyard, a small, grounding touch that carried the promise of protection and partnership. "They will test you," he murmured, his lips brushing her ear. "Challenge your claim. Question your strength. But we stand together. Always." Her pulse quickened, both from the nearness of him and the weight of destiny pressing down on her. "I will not falter," she said, resolve threading through her words. "Not with you beside me." The council of elders emerged, their faces carved from stone and experience. Their scrutiny was sharp, their whispers like knives seeking weakness. "The prophecy is powerful," one of them spoke, voice deliberate. "But power can corrupt as easily as it unites. How can we be certain her heart and mind align with the Alpha King's vision?" Seren stepped forward, letting the weight of her presence and the strength of her convictions fill the space between them. "I am Seren," she said, voice unwavering. "I am here because I survived, because I learned, because I chose this path with full knowledge of its cost. My loyalty is mine to give, my strength mine to wield, and my heart will never betray the Alpha King or this pack." A tense silence followed, broken only by the wind shifting through the banners overhead. Eyes flicked between her and the Alpha King, reading the subtle currents of their bond, the undeniable connection that transcended words. The Alpha King's gaze softened, stormy eyes brightening with unspoken pride and desire. "Let this be known," he said, voice carrying across the courtyard. Seren is not only my mate by prophecy, she is my equal, my partner, and my strength. Those who oppose her do so at their peril. Whispers rippled through the pack, tension thick but now tempered by the authority of truth and the undeniable spark between alpha and mate. Seren's heart beat fiercely, both from the affirmation of her role and the intoxicating nearness of the Alpha King. She felt destiny in her bones, the pull of prophecy intertwining with the warmth of the bond that had grown between them through fire, blood, and shadow. Yet beneath the triumph, Seren knew the road ahead would not be easy. Challenges awaited, allies and enemies would test loyalty and love alike, and the prophecy's weight carried both promise and danger. Every step would require courage, every heartbeat vigilance, and every whisper of desire an act of restraint. And as the Alpha King's hand closed lightly over hers, the silent promise passing between them stronger than any words, Seren understood fully. She was his true mate, bound by destiny, by strength, and by the unbreakable thread of their connection. Together, they would face the storms, the traitors, and the trials, because the pack's future and their hearts were now inseparable. The horizon burned crimson as the first light of dawn touched the fortress walls, painting the stone in shades of fire and blood. Seren stood at the edge of the ramparts, her pulse thrumming in sync with the distant war drums that echoed from the encroaching rival pack. Her hands were clenched around the hilt of her blade, muscles taut, instincts screaming, every sense alive with anticipation and fear. Beside her, the Alpha King moved like a shadow in the early light, his presence a living force of command and power. Storm-colored eyes scanned the approaching enemy, unyielding, unbroken, yet flickering toward her with concern, desire, and a warning that danger would not spare her, not even in the chaos to come. "They're using forbidden magic tied to your bloodline," he murmured, voice low yet heavy with urgency. "It will seek to exploit every weakness. We must fight together, Seren. Do not let it touch you or us." Seren's breath hitched, but she did not waver. "I will not falter," she said, her voice steady despite the thrum of tension in her chest. Her own instincts flared in response, senses heightened, every muscle coiled like a spring ready to strike. The threat was more than physical. It was spiritual, ancestral, a web of power meant to unsettle her very core. The courtyard erupted into chaos as the rival pack breached the outer walls. Figures shrouded in shadows moved with unnatural speed and precision, their eyes glinting with dark magic. Sparks of silver and blood-stained runes shimmered across the battleground, each spell and strike aimed to disorient, weaken, and provoke fear. Seren moved through the fray with measured precision, blade and instincts synchronized. Every swing, every parry, was a declaration of defiance. Her bloodline, a source of targeted magic, pulsed with latent strength, and she learned to channel it into force, reflex, and courage. Her movements were a dance of power, a storm of survival and resistance. The Alpha King was beside her, a whirlwind of controlled fury, his claws and fangs a blur of precision and authority. Their movements intertwined seamlessly, unspoken coordination born from weeks of shared trials, stolen moments, and instinctual connection. The magnetic tension between them charged the battlefield, a silent current amidst the chaos, binding them as partners in combat and in destiny. Yet the line between ally and enemy blurred. Some of their own pack faltered under fear, shadows twisting intentions into betrayal, while the rival forces exploited every moment of hesitation. Near-death moments tested their trust in one another. Seren felt the heat of the Alpha King's breath as he shielded her from a lethal spell, their bodies brushing with intimate urgency, even amid the clash of war. "Stay close," he growled, voice edged with both command and something more intimate, more protective. "We cannot fight separately, Seren. Not now." Her heart pounded not just from battle, but from the magnetism between them. The unspoken promise threaded through every touch, every glance, every heartbeat that collided in the heat of war. "I'm with you," she breathed, voice fierce, unyielding. Always. The enemy pressed harder, forbidden magic lashing against the fortress walls, crackling and burning with malevolent intent. Seren and the Alpha King fought side by side, a living storm of strength, instinct, and unbreakable bond. Each clash, each narrow escape, each act of sacrifice solidified their connection, proving not only her loyalty, but her irreplaceable value as his mate. As the battle reached a crescendo, a rival struck from the shadows, aimed directly at Seren. Time slowed, instinct and reflex merging. The Alpha King lunged, intercepting the blow, claws raking a warning through the air. Pain, intensity, and adrenaline surged in a single moment. Seren's breath caught, fear and relief intertwining, yet the proximity of danger only amplified the pull she felt toward him. A bond forged in fire and blood. When the dust settled, bodies strewn across the courtyard, magic dissipating into sparks and smoke. Seren stood alongside the Alpha King, bruised but unbowed. Her chest heaved, adrenaline mingling with the warmth of his nearness, the electricity of survival, and the unspoken promise that their bond had been tested and proven unbreakable. The pack, shaken but loyal, acknowledged her strength and bravery, whispers of respect weaving through the chaos. The Alpha King's hand brushed hers, brief but grounding, a wordless vow that no enemy, no magic, no betrayal could sever what they had become. Serene met his stormy gaze, feeling the full weight of the battle's lessons, the danger, the trust, the intertwining of their hearts and instincts. The war had tested more than strength. It had tested love, loyalty, and destiny itself. And in that silent acknowledgement, a promise was made. Whatever trials awaited, together they would endure, fight, and survive. The fortress trembled under the thunder of siege. Walls groaned, arrows whistled through the smoke-filled air, and the acrid scent of fire clung to everything. Seren stood at the highest battlement, her cloak torn and dirt-streaked, eyes scanning the chaos below. Her heart pounded, not only with the rhythm of battle, but with the weight of a decision that could change everything. The prophecy loomed over her like a living presence. Her destiny was entwined with the Alpha King, yet the choice was hers alone. To bind herself fully to him, embracing the love, power, and responsibility that came with it, or to walk away, risking chaos, rebellion, and the fury of packs beyond the fortress walls. Each heartbeat carried the tension of centuries-old fate, every breath a struggle between fear and desire. The Alpha King appeared at her side, his storm-colored eyes scanning the battlefield with unrelenting focus. His presence was both comforting and electrifying, a tether to the world around her, and a reminder of the heart-pounding pull between them. Seren could feel the heat of his body, the barely contained energy in his movements, and the quiet vulnerability hidden beneath his alpha exterior. "Seren," he murmured, voice low but charged with emotion. "The choice is yours. Whatever path you take, I will honor it. But I cannot lie. I do not want to let you go." Seren's chest tightened. She could feel the pulse of the pack below, the clash of blades, the cries of the wounded, and the sinister whisper of enemy forces. Danger was everywhere, yet her mind and heart were locked in a different kind of battle. The silent war between love, duty, and the prophecy that bound them both. Her gaze met his, and in that moment, the world seemed to narrow to just the two of them. Every memory, the stolen moments, the shared battles, the nights of whispered conversation and lingering touches, flashed through her mind. The Alpha King's strength, tempered with protectiveness, and her own survival instincts had intertwined to form something unbreakable. "I cannot run from this," Seren whispered, her voice trembling yet resolute. "I choose you. I choose this. Us. I will stand by your side, through every battle, every challenge, and every shadow that seeks to tear us apart." A storm of emotion swept across his features: pride, relief, longing, and the raw vulnerability of a leader who dared to love against all odds. He stepped closer, their foreheads almost touching, the noise of war fading into the background as the magnetic pull between them took center stage. "You are mine, Seren," he said, the words heavy with promise, authority, and unspoken desire. "And I will protect you, no matter the cost. Together, we are unstoppable. Together, we are bound by more than prophecy. We are bound by choice, by strength, and by the heart." The fortress around them erupted with the sounds of battle, but for a fleeting moment, time seemed to stand still. Seren felt the surge of power from their bond, the intertwining of strength, emotion, and destiny, and knew that this choice, this declaration of love and loyalty, was the key to surviving not just the present, but the trials still to come. As the Alpha King's hand closed over hers, firm and unyielding, she felt the unspoken vow pass between them. Whatever enemies, betrayals, or dark magic awaited, they would face it together. Her heart raced with exhilaration and relief. The weight of the prophecy was no longer a burden, but a guiding force. Below them, the pack rallied, sensing the resolution between their alpha and his mate. Whispers of approval, the low growls of readiness, and the tension of expectation rippled through the courtyard. Seren and the Alpha King stood together, united, a living testament to courage, loyalty, and the power of love forged through fire and shadow. The wind swept across the battlements, carrying with it the scent of battle, pine, and distant rain. In that charged moment, Seren realized that the choice had not only defined her heart, it had cemented a bond that would shape the destiny of the pack, the fortress, and the love that had become their greatest strength. And as the sun rose behind the smoke and chaos, painting the fortress in gold and shadow, Seren and the Alpha King shared a fleeting, electrifying glance, knowing that the storm had passed, and yet, together, they were ready to face whatever lay ahead. Of the pack, the fortress, and the love that had become their greatest strength. And as the sun rose behind the smoke and chaos, painting the fortress in gold and shadow, Seren and the Alpha King shared a fleeting, electrifying glance, knowing that the storm had passed, and yet, together, they were ready to face whatever lay ahead. The fortress stood silent beneath the pale light of dawn, its walls scorched, battered, and scarred, a testament to the war that had threatened to unravel everything. Smoke lingered faintly in the air, carrying with it the metallic tang of blood and the acrid scent of spent magic. Seren stepped carefully over broken stone and shattered banners, her eyes scanning the remnants of the battlefield. Despite the devastation, there was a sense of fragile triumph, a quiet victory carved through courage, loyalty, and sheer determination. Beside her, the Alpha King walked with a measured grace, his presence a living shield against lingering threats. His storm-colored eyes were intense, flickering with reflection, pride, and a quiet, unwavering love. He occasionally glanced at her, the connection between them as taut and magnetic as ever, a silent affirmation of their shared trials and the bond forged through fire, shadow, and blood. "Serene," he murmured, voice low, almost reverent. "We've endured. And yet the fortress still stands. The pack endures. And you've endured more than anyone could have imagined." Seren's gaze met his, the warmth in her chest blossoming alongside the adrenaline still pulsing through her veins. "We endured together," she said, voice steady but laced with the depth of unspoken emotion. "I've learned that survival is never about one person. It's about trust, loyalty, and the courage to fight for those who stand beside you." The courtyard, once a battlefield, now hummed with quiet activity. Pack members moved among the wounded and weary, tending to injuries, repairing damage, and whispering prayers or gratitude under their breath. Some offered nods of respect to Seren as she passed. a recognition not just of her strength, but of her unwavering commitment to the Alpha King and the pack's survival. The Alpha King stopped at the center of the courtyard, his gaze sweeping over the surviving pack, and finally settling on her. Seren felt the invisible pull between them, the gravity of destiny, of trust, of love, and she stepped closer. The ruins around them faded into insignificance compared to the storm of emotions swirling between them. "I never imagined we'd make it through," he said quietly, almost to himself, but with a force that reverberated through her. "Yet here we are, and I could not have asked for a stronger mate by my side." Seren felt her throat tighten, the intensity of his words and the gravity of their shared experiences washing over her. She reached for his hand, letting her fingers intertwine with his, grounding herself in the warmth and certainty of their connection. "I am yours, as you are mine," she said, her voice carrying the weight of promise, loyalty, and the undeniable pull of destiny fulfilled. The fortress, though scarred, began to breathe again. Soldiers repaired walls, pack members whispered strategies for rebuilding, and a cautious hope spread through the air like the first light of dawn piercing shadows. Even in the aftermath of chaos, life persisted. And amidst it, the Alpha King and Seren stood together, a living symbol of resilience and unbroken bond. Yet, despite the calm, a tension lingered at the edges of the fortress, eyes hidden in shadow, whispers from distant corners, and subtle movements suggested that threats had not vanished entirely. Danger, Seren knew, was never fully gone, but neither was the strength they had discovered within themselves, nor the love that had carried them through the darkest nights. The Alpha King's gaze softened as he leaned slightly closer, his hand brushing hers once more. "Whatever comes next," he murmured, voice threaded with authority and affection, "we face it together, as equals, as mates, as the heart of this pack." Seren drew in a steadying breath, the first true sense of peace in weeks settling over her. Her eyes met his, storm and shadow mirrored in the depths of his gaze, yet softened with hope and an unspoken promise. "Together," she whispered, her fingers tightening around his. And so, amidst the lingering scars of war, the fortress of stone and shadow, and a pack forever changed by loyalty and sacrifice, the Alpha King and Seren embraced their destiny. They were more than alpha and mate, they were equals, partners, and the living embodiment of hope, forged through struggle, love, and unwavering trust. The wind shifted, carrying faint echoes of distant threats, a reminder that their journey was far from over. Yet as they stood side by side, hearts beating in sync, hands intertwined, and eyes locked in shared determination, Seren knew one truth above all. Together, they could endure anything. Together, they had claimed their ever after.